On? Great. Thanks, Susanna. It was hard to remember which room it was. I kept thinking, I know it's something with a mountain, but is it Rainier or St. Helens? It sounds like it's a whole volcano range. Great. So as Susanna said, my name is Shmueli. I'm a program manager in the SharePoint search team. I assume everybody here is interested in search. We'll focus today on customization of search user interfaces. And I'd like to start with a personal story. I'd like to start with what happened to me the other day when I was working on those slides as a way to illustrate what we were working on towards this coming release. I'm working on the slides and my mind wanders off and I'm suddenly thinking to myself, I really should complete my t-shirt collection. I have all these t-shirts with Monty Python themes on them, but there's one theme that's missing, the one with the silly walk with John Cleese. And before I know it, I alt-tab and I go online and I search, and it's 2 clicks, 5 minutes, and I have the t-shirt. I have it in the right color. I have it in the right size. It has the right kick to it. And I'm parted with my money, and I have it in my box, and I'm ready to go. And I have no more excuses to procrastinate, and I start again with the slides. 5 minutes later, the telephone rings. And a guy calls and he says, "Hi, Avi, we haven't met in a while. I'm back in Redmond. I'm coming to this conference. And do you happen to know, is there a guy in office who's in charge or works on digital signatures? Because I'd really love to be able to talk with them." And I'm hearing myself telling him, you know, I think I know the guy who might know the guy who owns this area. And there's a good chance they're working next door to me or across the street. Why don't you let me send a few emails? Maybe run a search and get back to you. And he says, "I'm back to Germany by Friday, so don't rush, no problem." He said, "If you're back to Germany by Friday, I better get back to you, you know, Thursday evening at most, so that you get to meet this person." And, you know, I hang up with him, and he's very thankful. Kevin, are you there? He's very thankful, but I'm thinking, that's very embarrassing. You know, how can I, you know, buy a t-shirt in 2 clicks in less than 5 minutes, but when it comes to searching for a guy in my own organization, I don't have the confidence it'll take me a day or 2 or 3. And that's what our customers are telling us, right? And they probably tell you, if they don't tell you, they need to wake up, because a lot more of them are going online all the time, and they're used to just typing things into a text box, getting back the results. They know what the results look like. They know if they click, they have a very high assurance they'll get what they wanted. So that was our focus this release, as a way to start talking about what you're about to see. What we focused on this release is one thing only, and it's called relevance. Relevance is the key word for user satisfaction in search. But it's not just the key word for user satisfaction. People now identify relevance, which can be measured objectively, with user satisfaction in search. This is the one thing they expect search to do, because they are spoiled now by internet search, right? So we owe it to them to be just as spoiled inside the corporation. What that meant for us is that we invested tons in working on relevance algorithms in the engine, working on tools and metrics so that our engine keeps improving, and that we track ourselves so that we never stand still in that effort, and that we build UI that is modern and smooth and expected. This is what users look at and they say, "Oh yeah, that's internet search," or they don't even think that, but they know these are results. This is what I expected. So the part of the UI identification of the user is delivered as well. And this is where you come in. We will build the generic UI. We will build the UI that answers most needs, and then to fit it into vertical markets, to fit it into customer environment, to fit it into new data types, to make it work across legacy applications, new applications. This is where you plug in. So what we're going to do is I'll try to walk through the UI, present it in all its beta 1/beta 2 glory. I'll try to track how it's built and walk through how the components are built in the UI that we built into the product. And then once we have this insight, walk through an increasing complexity of programmability tasks. So here's a picture of the UI, but I would really prefer to switch to a real UI. So here is a website that I put together. This is, in fact, a portal template. It doesn't look much like a portal because I put it together for this show. Looks a little bit more like a SharePoint team site. The component for search that you see in this homepage would be the thing on the right-hand side at the top. Should be familiar to everybody who's familiar with SharePoint or Portal from the previous release or the current release. You have the scopes drop-down, you have the text box, and you have a button to click search. That's easy. So let me run a search to get us to the part that is slightly newer. John Cleese. Okay, let's walk through this search results page. This is the search results page that you will see pretty much in the portal template. At the very top, I mean after the editing controls, I happen to be an author on this page, so the editing controls are not visible to the end user. But right below them, where you see the search box and the drop-down for scopes, you will see 2 tabs. That's new. All sites is the standard scope. People is the scope where we return people results. Both of those data types came back in the previous release. This time we make them separable, and it's very easy. You just click through, and the query is run in parallel on the people tab, and you get back people results. And this is extensible so that you can add your own tabs with your own data types or your own custom UI. Further below, you see what we call a high confidence result. In this case, I type John Cleese. It's an exact match on the preferred name of this user. So we get a special display coming back from a special result set that comes back from the object model and so forth. We'll track this down. You can extend this, so if you have a list of T-shirts and each T-shirt has its own ID, then a user can just type the ID now and you can anticipate that and put the result for that T-shirt. And so forth, addresses, anything that is a closed vocabulary in a database application. On the right-hand side, on the east, you have what used to be called best bets. Now it's a little more elaborate. You have the opportunity to add a keyword that is editorially defined, and then a list of best bets next to it with descriptions that are associated with this best bet for this keyword. Other enhancements are, I type John Cleese, the match is on Monty Python, John Cleese is a synonym, I'm told that Monty Python is the keyword, and I can potentially attribute this to a person who's responsible for the definition and the best bets. This is nice because now I know this is not the relevance engine that gives it to me, this is somebody in the taxonomy department. So that brings us to the core results. The core results, I now have 100% trust. This is returned by the search engine. There's no mucking about of editorial versus relevance. I have the editorial / advertisement on the right-hand side, and this is my contract with the user. I give you everything that the search engine should give you. And the results will be in simpler format, more fluid, more modern, more recognizable for people who use the web. I believe I need to flip back now. So, okay, this is the new UI. Now let's go back to programmability tasks. I'd like to start with what you can do without writing a single line of code. What you can do with simply modifying properties on the web parts. That will be the baby step, step number 1. Then we'll go from there to what you can do with writing client-side scripts, JavaScript, modifying XML properties, modifying XML, modifying XSLTs. That's great. Now you program, but you don't compile anything, you don't change anything in deployment except you put files into a publishing system, the portal. So that's easy. Then we'll draw a fence and say certain scenarios are stopped there, you need to go further. Now we'll go to the object model and talk about what you can do if you need to build web parts, you need to write your own applications, you need to integrate and build on top of the search query object model. And finally, once we got the object model flow, we'll go from there to the web service, which is very similar but gives you remoting for free. So let's go through simple scenarios. Let's say that I am not a search administrator, I'm not a programmer, I own a website or a couple of pages in a team site, and this is dedicated to, say, Monty Python, just theoretically. And what I want is, I want my users to have a simple search box. If they go to that search box, they can get results in the standard results page, but the results should be restricted to one source, which is one website. So I want to say what the scope is, and so forth. How do I do that without having any programming, etc.? So let me take us back to the home page. Let me connect. Let me connect some more. Apparently without the network it doesn't work. Here we are. So I put two controls on the page just to compare. The first one, I dragged and dropped the standard search box. This is the same one that you see in the Chrome. And the second one is the one that I wanted, right? My fictional user wanted. And what it does is it doesn't have scopes drop down because I'm telling them what the scope is. And to let them know what it is for, I have a label at the bottom that says search the Monty Python completely useless website, which is a real website, and I want only results from that website to come back, right? So what did I do to build this control? Let me first run a query just to see that it works. And it seems to work because you will see www.intriguing.com. This is the only site that comes back. If I go back to the original query, I'll get different result. If I'll go back to the original control here, well, now I get results from pbs.org, etc. So that's not good for me. So quickly, you know, what would a web owner or a page owner do to do this? Here I am switching to edit mode. I click to edit the web part, and I'll go through its properties. So first I will turn off the scopes drop down because I don't want to give them the choice. I'm done with the scopes drop down. I'll go to the query box and I will stretch it to be wider. That's always good. Then I will go and specify that in addition to the regular query terms, I'm adding the part of the query that says site : and www.intriguing.com. And some of you may not be familiar with this. Some of you may think that this is nothing new. It's new for us. We didn't have site : in the previous release, but we do now. Site is a property. Property : value now works in keyword queries. And what I do here is I put this part of the query secretly into the query, and then I clear this checkbox so that it doesn't show in the UI. So now I have part of the query, the part that says site : secretly going with the query. And that's great. And I believe that that's all I needed to do. Now, say that I have the next guy over, and he's similar in his wishes, but he would like to do a little bit more. He feels like the label should be on the left instead of the bottom. He likes to have a prompt inside the box that goes away when you click on it, and he likes to have a different GIF, right? So we accommodate that also, and it's just a different set of properties. I don't have to go through the properties. There are properties to click on the GIF, what the GIF looks like if you click on it, what it is when you didn't click on it. Should there be a prompt inside? Should there not be a prompt inside? And this text box, for example, will actually go to a named scope rather than restrict by site. It will restrict to whatever scope the administrator set as the scope X. Simple properties. So there's another text box. I set the scope there, etc. So that's nice. But really, as we will see later, search boxes are not such a big challenge because they don't do much. They're just text boxes, and all they do is a facility to construct a URL for you, and then they post the URL, and all the action happens on the other side. So if you want to affect the action on the other side, if you want to show that the results are different, etc., you need more than this. And if you know some JavaScript, you may not even need this at all, right? Because all you need to do is construct a URL, and we'll do that later. So let's move to search results. So now my fictional story would be slightly different. I'm still not a search administrator or a big guy. I just own this one page. But people come to my page. I like that. And I want to give them a web part that will show the 5 most recent postings from the search index about Monty Python. So what I want to do is I want results from the search index, only 5, sorted by time, descending, and I want to give them a link at the bottom that will take them to other results going down that list. I can do that without any programming, and I don't even have to call the guy in the administration department. I just need to be an owner of a page. So here's my page. I called it 5 most recent items about Monty. It's my own custom UI. And what I'd like to do here is, if it's okay with you, step through constructing this from 0. So I'll take a regular search results web part, and I'll morph it into this behavior. So let me edit the page. You'll note that the results still show on the page and render as I edit through them, which is nice. And you will look and see that the results do, the most recent result from this scope, which is all sites, everything on the internet, is indeed March 7th. This is the last time content was updated about Monty Python. So now let me go and pick a new web part. I'll go and find the search core results web part, add it to the page, and step through the changes. At first, this core web part will not give me the results because it doesn't know what the query is. Normally, it would expect the user to add a query, and there isn't a query in the URL. It doesn't know what to do. So I go in, and I'll start top to bottom. I don't want 10 results per page, which is the standard. I want 5. We start with 3 sentences in the summary, and then we will take that summary, which is new in this release, and squish it based on the words that hit on the query. I think that since I only have 5 results, I can do a little bit better. So I'll switch it to 5 sentences to begin with. I don't want it to be sorted by relevance. I want it to be sorted by modified date, so I pick that option. I don't need the option to flip to another sort order displayed, because what's the point? I'll remove the alert me link in this case, but I'll keep the RSS because that's cool. People like that. That's new in this release as well. I don't care for displaying discovered definitions. I think I'll remove it. We can talk about it later. In the results query options, yes, I want to remove duplicates. This is also a new feature in this release. Enable search term stemming is not necessary. I'll keep all of these options. I will set the query to have its own ID. This is the part that's interesting because I can run up to 5 different unique queries on a page. One of them is the query that the user gives me. The other 4 are exactly for this purpose, parts that just have the query built in. Now I have the opportunity to say what the fixed query should be. So I want the query to be Monty. And now I want the link at the bottom that will tell people, click here for more. So I'll say, click here for the full Monty, ... And now I'll put the URL in, and the URL is where that simple trick is. I post back to the same page or to the results page. In this case, I'll go to the results page. So I type my server name in this case, search, which is my search center, the little web with the search results pages, results.aspx. Did I miss that? 113, that's right. 113, K equals Monty, and start position equals 6, because I'm displaying 5 results here, and sort order equals date. That's cool. That should do the trick. I want the scope to be all sites, which is the default scope, and the default scope excludes people. I don't need to show action links. I can show messages. Messages means show the error messages if they are necessary. And I think I'm all done. Let me see. I'm almost done. There's one little thing I need to update. You will not have this problem. I think this is a bug. Here you go. And the results came back. Let me get out of the edit mode so it'll be easy for us to see it. Page, save and stop editing. I know how many of you have seen publishing, server publishing demonstrations, but this is basically a publishing page. So I collaborate with it, on it with other people. So I have this publishing semantics, save, check out, check in. And here I have the search results, and I have the link that I constructed. And the link has the URL, and if I didn't misspell the URL or otherwise miscalculate, I should get back to the search results page, which will take me to the 6th result. Let me see. Let's give it a chance. C113, search pages, results, SPX, Monty. Start is 6 and this date. Somewhere on the other part of the campus, somebody just tripped over a wire and killed my server. No, here it is. And it does say results 6 through 15 and so forth, so I'm all set. That's it. So it took me a little bit. I'll probably have to read documentation if I'm not a search maven. But this is nice. Okay, so there's plenty that you can do with nothing but properties, and some of you may be sitting here saying, okay, Avi, but so far you haven't told us anything that has to do with programming. Why are you doing that? And the reason is that you did have to do programming to get any of this working in the previous release. So it's a good mental shift to remember you don't have to do this anymore. It's enough to change XML properties on the web part, or tell your users to do so. This is not your task anymore. So you can graduate to better things. The next level would be modifying XSLT and doing client-side scripts. But before that, I'd like to recap what happened on the page and do an analysis of how the page works. So what happened on the page as I ran the search, the first thing, like we said, we posted to the search results page with the right parameters. That's on the browser. Now, on the server side, the web parts look at the URL and take the query parameter, and they take the scope parameter. Those are strings. In some cases, you don't want to deal only with the default set of properties, but you want to add your own set of properties, so you put them in yet another property on the web part. So the web part will go to another property called columns and get an XML blob that specifies the columns to add to the select statement in the SQL query. It will take that. Now it has all the information it needs. So the web part layer will call the object model, the search object model, construct a query object, and call the execute method. It does that. The object model goes to the search service. The search service will go to the index, get the document list. It will go to the database and get the property cache for the values to be shown on the page. And it goes back to the object model again and gives it the data. The object model takes it and wants to wrap it in the lightest possible data structure. So it takes and builds a number up to 4, I believe, different iData reader objects. It sends those back to the server. Okay, now the web parts get the iData reader, but because it's an iData reader, they cannot share it, and now we have 5 or 6 different web parts on the page. They all want to render different results, and they want to be flexible enough so you can move them around. How can they all participate in the same iData reader? So the first thing we do on that page is we take it and wrap it in XML, and that XML is then shared across with the other web parts. The other web parts take the XML as needed and transform it to HTML using an XSLT transform that is another property on the web part. And finally, now that they have HTML, it renders on the browser. This is your opportunity to put CSS style sheets and whatever JavaScript runs on the browser. So now that we understand the different layers, let's go through them and see where you come in. easy. You can modify the style sheets. You probably want to. You probably want to brand this. You want to make it look better. A little harder, you can change your transform. Why do you want to change your transform? When the properties are not just the right properties, or they don't say it in the way you want, or you just want to move everything around. Theoretically, since this is a transform, given this set of data, you can do with it whatever you please. Take it to Avalon, make it a beautiful UI, show bubbles instead of the rank number. It's up to you. Another trick that we went through is you can construct very simple UIs, and you construct iterative user interface paradigms by simply tricking the UI with new URL parameters. If all this fails because your task is bigger than this, then you go to the object model first. You can write on top of the object model to build your own search applications. You can write your own web service, etc. And of course, web parts. You can write your own set of web parts. There's 3 tasks that I didn't put in the bubbles here because they're not about UI, but it's important to just remember that they still exist. If you need new data types going in, you still have support for the protocol handler interface for new data stores. iFilters are still supported if you need new document types. Another way to put data types in is to invest in a new SharePoint template. If that's what you do, the SharePoint template will immediately get sucked in by the search engine. Every custom column goes in. And the third and the most fun way is if you have business objects in SQL, in SAP, in a web service, and you want to expose them. We have a new feature called the Business Data Catalog, which allows you to render them on the portal and also to index them and make them available to search. On that, we'll have a talk, I believe, in the same track tomorrow, which is interesting. Maybe I'll have the time to show a screen or 2 about that. So 3 ways to add new content. But we're not done. There's more. I just one more time to go through the page and just show the web parts that we ship and how they talk with each other. You start with the core search results web part. That's its own web part. It does the query construction. It talks with the OM basically and renders the results. It derives from a front page provided data form web part, which is similar to data view. We have another web part that will do the high confidence match that we discussed before. Another one to write the statistics. This is how long it took you. This is how many results are available. This is how many results. This is where your page is. Another one to do the pagination so that you can move it around. In fact, we use 2 instances of the same one on the page. Yet another one gives you the opportunity to stick in a URL link that will have access to the data that comes back from the result set so you can act on the full set. The search box, we know the search box, the best bets and keyword on the right-hand side. Those are all separate web parts. And finally, our secret is the hidden object, right? The secret sauce. So the way the flow works is the first part that goes on the page, normally the search results part, because you need to show stuff, will allocate and create this hidden object. It's the hidden object that calls our object model, gets back the iData reader, wraps it up in XML, and shares it with all of the web parts. And the way they talk is using a custom protocol. So your way to integrate with this is to not derive, but to extend one of those web parts by going into their XSLT property and transforming the transform, because those web parts can see the XML. So they have access to the result set. So normally, what do you do if you want to change the transform? Typically, you will have a new set of properties that you want to show. Sometimes you can take your custom properties. Say you have a store for Monty Python T-shirts. And each T-shirt will have a size and a color and an image. You can maybe map them to existing properties in the schema. You have that. If, however, you want to show all the existing properties and those, then you need to change the XSLT. The first thing you have to do is make sure that they're indexed, and then you need to tell the columns property that that web part wants those properties. So you want to extend the set of columns that are selected. You do that first. Now the web part gets the XML, and in the XML you will have the nodes that correspond to these new properties that you added, the T-shirt properties. And I think that I described before what kind of scenarios, and I think we can talk about what kind of scenarios this is appropriate for. This is probably appropriate for everything unless you start to do heavy-duty access on the server side and you want to do more complicated interaction with the query processor search service. So how do you specify properties to select? You have an XML value property that looks like this. It has a list of columns to select. Say your properties are shirt size, shirt color, and shirt image. You add the strings there. On the administrative side, you declare them. You re-index. Now the properties are picked up and mapped automatically, and they will be available for display. How do you display them? Now you have to learn XSLT, which is great fun. So you can start with the example that we ship out of box. But you will have, for example, in this case, you will see us calling, displaying the shirt size with a string, and then calling a function, essentially, in XSLT that will take the property value and the property name and display them. And it says shirt size, and it will display the shirt size value. I think we'll step through the XSLT on the product, and we can see that. Now here is your opportunity to play and extend the UI a little bit. For example, you can take the trick of combining URL parameters and building new URLs, and the fact that you're in the XSLT to construct those URLs and expose them as links inside the search results. There's two ways that are fun that we don't ship out of the box. One is a drill down. So say you look at all the properties and you look at all the results and the user says, okay, I like your 51 results, but now I want to focus on only the results where the color is green for the t-shirt. Well, click on this link and it will expand the query, and now it has this added restriction that the color has to be green. Or you can do the other thing, which is just pivot and just take a 90-degree angle, turn, and say, forget what I did with the query, just construct a URL, expose a link that will take this color on this result and make it the new query. So now show me everything where the color is green, forget about everything else. Two little things that can really build fun UIs. Here is a code snippet in XSLT that will do the pivot, the 90-degree angle. So in this case, we say, let's take everything and whatever results we got, if that result has this file extension, click here and you will see only results from this file extension. So what we had to do here was take the file extension, put it in the property set, add it to the columns property so it comes back in results, then call it in the XSLT, find the file extension here, call a function that will take those values and construct a URL. So I'd rather just walk through it in this case. Let's run a little query. Carol Cleveland. Carol Cleveland was the 7th Monty Python. Does anybody remember Carol Cleveland? She was called the Glamour Stooge. She was the most prominent female Monty Python. Here are the result set, and here's our code with the addition that we made, where you have a link here, and it will, in this case, it's an HTML file that came back in the results. Right here below is an HTML file, and the second result is an ASP, is in the ASP file. So if I go and I click here, it now does a drill down, and now my query changed to Carol Cleveland file extension :HTML. Very simple, and now I have this little drill down effect. So let's walk through it. Edit the page. Edit the results page, the result part. The result part derives from the dataform web part. The dataform web part exposes this lightweight editor that shows you the XSLT. That's nice, but I think it's better to use a real tool. So let's switch to, normally I will paste it into this But the other thing that you can do is just put that file, the XSLT file, in its own file in the document library on the server, and you can write a URL property into the web part, and you don't need the editor again ever. You can have multiple web parts referring to the same XSLT. So in this case, let me see, where is drill? Here we are, display drill down. So in this case, let's walk down to this area in the XSLT. We start with the template here. We start drawing the UI for the search results. We show the action links. Sometimes the action links are rendered as part of the result set. Sometimes they're rendered in their own web part. We give you that flexibility. There's a bunch of XSLT here to deal with things like if you want to see more results after we collapsed results, and this is how you will do it. Basically, everything in the layer of the UI comes back. Oh, my teenage daughter just logged in. Super Sparkle Fashion Model is logged into IM. I thought I turned it off. So here we go. Here we are displaying the size of the document here. And what we do is we call a very simple function that will take the property name, property value, and so we don't even have to look at that function. But we do it for the author, we do it for the size, and we do it for the property called write, which is the, I believe, the date last modified. Here we are with the file extension, and what we do here is we call a template called display drill down with those parameters, and what display drill down does is it will go to the URL, which is available on the XML, modify it, and add two new parameters to it. K equals field name colon value. That wasn't hard. It wasn't easy, but that's because you need to learn XSLT. Here is another way to do it. This one is called display pivot, and this one will not increment the query and restrict it, but simply create a new query. That's easier to do. Moving on. Okay, we learned XSLT. Before we jump into compiled code, I just wanted to cover the keyword syntax, the SQL syntax, the dialects that we have and we use today in the product. Because the keyword syntax was newly introduced in this release. People who are familiar with search are familiar with our SQL syntax. We'll cover them and compare them. The keyword syntax was introduced as part of the campaign to make the UI more familiar to people who know the internet. So the colon syntax, etc. What it does is it will let you type in property equality queries, colon, property name, colon, property value. It allows you to specify phrase queries by doing the double quotes. We had feeble support for double quotes in the previous release. It wasn't good enough. This one will work. It gives you the ability to specify minus for not. So, and you can extend that to minus property name, property value. That's nice. And a small segment of internet users are used to it, expect it, and ask for it repeatedly. Now it's available. Now that it's available, there's a lot that you can do with it inside those low-level, simple, easy kind of application writing. You can use and, you can put plus, you can put minus. The one thing that you cannot do is combine them together in some arbitrary fashion. You have to write object model to declare that your query is going to be an OR query, as it was for us in the previous release. We now shifted to AND by default. So you can put as many pluses as you want. They're not necessary by default. But you can go and switch the object model and say, now the query is going to be OR by default, and now the plus is meaningful. Otherwise, you have... the other thing that you can do, you cannot have parentheses, so don't even worry about precedence and ordering and grouping. Users won't, so it's not provided in the keyword syntax. And scopes, so if you have named scopes, as in the previous release, you can just say scope, colon, and the scope name. The URL trick, There's a long list. It's on MSDN, the URL parameters. We are backward compatible to the extent that the semantics are the same. K for the keyword, S for the scope, V for the date. I use the start parameter to specify the first row. And I wouldn't necessarily take literal notes, because I know people are working hard putting it into MSDN and chum files. So the SQL syntax in comparison, for those who are not familiar with it, it looks like SQL. It's not meant for end users to type in. It was originally designed when we inserted the full text search feature into SQL, I believe SQL 7. So it looks like SQL. It has the flexibility of SQL. It doesn't mean that if it can express something, we're going to be good at it. We are a search engine for full text. We're very good. We're going to claim to be very good and work hard to return relevant results fast when you ask for relevant results. Everything else is possible to express. Most of what is possible to express will work, but is restricted by the tools that we have. In this case, it will usually be processed by SQL Server, which we use now. But when you stray away from free text, you're going into the domain that is not really our core domain. You go into database queries. So contains will give you a Boolean match. If the text contains it, it will be there. Like is just like SQL like. And it will work, but it will work just as SQL works at best. Which means that when you go to our scale of the number of documents that go in the index, you should expect it to be slower than ranking by relevance. And you can specify any order by any property, by any sort, ascending or descending, but the one thing that will work well is rank descending. Why do I put all of those three things together, especially the keyword syntax and the SQL syntax? Is because both the object model and the web service use either of them interchangeably. The flow of the programming is roughly the same. So if you go to the object model, which you will do to build web parts, etc., or you go to SQL, you have the same sequence. You create a query object, and you'll have two different query objects to represent the SQL syntax or the keyword, but they share a lot of properties. You run execute, you get back a result set. The result set is, the type is called results table collection. It's basically an array, a collection of iData reader objects. What you do is you specify what kind of results you want, and it's a mask. So by default, you can just say, I want everything, and you will get whatever is available. The first one is relevant results. Those are the results that show in the core web part. And you will see when you look at the data set and the properties that the way we shape the data set makes it extremely easy for the UI to render it. You don't have to calculate a lot when you render. It's all there for you. If you want to say, here is a link for show duplicates, well, there will be a property that says show duplicates link should go here. You don't have to group and calculate and tabulate. You can ask for special term results. If you recall, those are the things on the right-hand side, the east part of the page, the editorial results and best bets. You can ask for high confidence results. Sometimes they'll come back. And definition results are one feature in our UI which will give you automatically extracted definitions. So we will go through text, we'll see something that looks like a definition, we'll volunteer it back. So quickly, let's go through an object model application. And this will be our opportunity to exercise a few queries. So I'm very proud. I don't usually write code, but this was a nice reprieve. So here I have a web application. I know, it's very attractive. But the point will be to go through the debugger and stop and just put some life into the flow that I presented. And also to maybe look at a few queries. So let's look at the file called some queries. And let's start with the minimal thing. Let's say I want to look for Carol. And I want to look for Carol within the people scope. So I expect to find Carol's record to come back. So I'm asking for relevant results. It will come back, right? Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, I should... Where are we? Here we are. So let me fly through the program first before we step through it. Just let's see the display. Why did I lose it? Here it is. So Carol came back, and I can see the full set of results. So by default, keyword query will just give me the standard set, the default set of properties, and I can see its rank. Rank will go from 0 to 1,000. The numbers are only good for one result set. They're only good to differentiate one result from another. You can display them literally. You can convert them to visuals, but we cannot promise that the graph will be smooth or meaningful. They're only good for the sort. Here I have the title, I have the path, I have the standard properties. If there's anything interesting, I would say look at the property that gives back the heat highlighted summary. It's a sort of an XML blob that you need to go and transform. And it allows you to build UI that will even show different matches on different query terms in different colors or in a different way. So each query term will show with a different tag, C0, C1, C through 9, I believe. Okay, that was easy. Let's take one more keyword query and step through the debugger just to remember the flow. So this keyword query will say, give me Carol, but only from the site intriguing.com. So here I go. Okay, I take the text from the query, and I create a query object. Then I take the name of the site, which is on the other text box, in this case my site CO113, and I create a site so that I can pass it to the server context. This is the hardest part, is how to get started. You need the server context. It's very easy if you write a web part or a web application because the context will just be available to you. It's called server context.current. Otherwise, you have to reconstitute it from the server name.